Hello to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I'm in the passenger seat, heading up to the Hunter Valley. I've got my beautiful, capable wife Paula driving next to me, and it reminds me that just over a year ago we were in Greece, and Paula was driving for the first time, and we had such a great time, and we can't wait to relive that experience once again, hopefully in the next couple of years, where we can go back to Greece and catch up with family and friends and be united as one again. It's overcast, it's raining, but hopefully it'll clear up for the concert tomorrow at the Hope Estate, where Dimitris Bassis will be the key performer, and there'll be dancers. Not quite sure what to expect, but we're looking forward to it, and it hopefully will be a great experience for all the people travelling from Sydney. Anyway, let's go for a drive and talk, and I want to take you through a book summary entitled Behave by Robert M. Sapolsky, who's a psychiatrist. And what he's going to do is going to talk to us about why we do things and what chemical reactions and what part of the brain actually are incorporated in the way we behave, in the good things and the bad things that we do. So the author kicks off with a observation where he says that things that seem morally obvious and intuitive now weren't necessarily so in the past. Many started with non-conforming reason. So what is the author talking about? Where is he leading us with this book and with this whole discussion? And I often wonder myself, and the author then asks us a basic question. Have you ever wondered to yourself, why did I just do or say that? Or left thinking about the action of others which left us puzzled? Sometimes we say and do things when you look back and go, why the hell did I do that? How stupid. And you look at your friends and family and other people around you and you say to yourself, well, why'd they do that? It just doesn't make sense. So what the author here takes us on is a journey into our minds, into our brains, into our physiology, to explain to us how we're made up, how we're wired, how the chemicals in our bodies influence the way we behave and the way we react, and how to basically make the most of it or manage it if it's a problem. So the author makes a very valid point here that we need an interdisciplinary approach to understanding human behavior, because when it's all said and done, we are all irrational, unpredictable at best. I can't understand myself sometimes. I can't predict what I'm going to think, what I'm going to do, and I think we're all in the same boat in that respect. So what the author is saying is, in order to figure out human behavior, we need an interdisciplinary approach to look at it from different angles in order to try and understand and figure out how we're wired and what makes us do the things we do. So this is a technical sort of look into how we operate. So we're going to learn some new things here in terms of biology. So the author then goes on to instruct us with the first formal point in this book, that in our brains we have a region, a section called the amygdala. And the amygdala comes from the Greek word meaning amygdalo, and I'm sounding like the father in my big Greek fat wedding. But it's a Greek word, amygdala, which means almond. And this part of the brain is a shape of an almond. And that's the part of the brain which is always looking out for danger. And the author says that the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, which is another part of the brain, are always battling together. They're always confronting each other. And how does this happen, and why is it important? Let's learn something new. The amygdala and the cerebral cortex is the reason for fear and aggression. The amygdala, incorrectly, this is a very, very important point, because the amygdala is always on the lookout for items which are threatening, or it thinks that they're threatening. And it may have been useful in our development thousands of years ago, where there was a saber-toothed tiger waiting to eat us up, or we were hunting, or there was something about to happen, we were about to go to war, arm-to-arm combat, and we'd always be looking out for threats. But what the author here is saying is that the amygdala in our life today incorrectly identifies threats in milliseconds and secretes chemicals into our blood, into our body, and into our brains to put us on guard and to put us into the flight or fight response or the freeze response. And on the other hand, we've got a thing called the prefrontal cortex, whose job is to rationally try and figure out what's happening and to put the amygdala at ease. The prefrontal cortex is in the newer part of the brain, which enables us to rationalize and to think and to weigh up the risks, and it helps us take action, but it takes a little bit longer to take action and react. So the first thing that happens in our brains is that we are fearful. Fear takes over. And it happens in milliseconds, according to the author. So once we see something, we immediately are on alert. And then, hopefully, the rational part of the brain kicks in and helps us think it through and reassures us and puts us at ease. But we all need to understand that the amygdala always overreacts, and the prefrontal cortex relaxes and calms this overreaction. But there's a constant battle. And the author then goes on to say something which is a little bit confronting, but we need to be honest and to try and think about these things at least. And the author says that racist people and violent people have an overdeveloped amygdala. So the part of their brain, the amygdala, is overstimulated, overdeveloped, and that can happen, from the time that we're children. If you're constantly being scared or frightened, or being told things to frighten you, sometimes our imagination gets overstimulated, and this part of our brain, the amygdala, develops bigger and bigger and gets overstimulated and overdeveloped. The author then goes on to say that psychopaths and violent criminals, some of them have an injured frontal cortex, or their frontal cortex, or that part of the brain which is the rational part of the brain that we talked about before, the one that does battle with the amygdala, may have been injured or damaged at a young age, or have low activity, and then which means that we can't rationally put the amygdala into control, and hence why they're psychopathic and overly violent. So the second formal point to come out of this book, and sorry to be talking so long about this, but I do get excited about these sorts of topics every now and then. But the second formal point to come out of this book is that, at the end of the day, we're the product of our sensory cues. So the sensory cues around us make us behave in certain ways. And quite shockingly, this author says, and it surprises me, but hear me out, hear the author out. He said that our human brain is very attuned to skin color, believe it or not, which is quite confronting, I've got to admit. Our human brain is very attuned to skin color. And what the author is suggesting here is that the amygdala is activated when we come into contact with different races, and hopefully it is quelled by our frontal cortex. Our senses, the author says, are influenced by our environment, and in many cases, as an example, males, when they're around females, are more likely to take more risks. And the author suggests that this is a mating signal. So once again, chemicals get stimulated by our environment, by our sensory expression, and all of these things sometimes stimulate parts of our brains that are beyond our control. So if, for example, we're wired in a way that our amygdala gets stimulated and can overreact by just simply seeing a skin color, then what are the biases? What are the things do we have in our lives, in our world, which, if not managed by our prefrontal cortex and our education and our rationality, could lead us to being racist, could lead us to being mean. You know what I'm talking about, being bullies. It's, to a certain extent, a lot of those things are hardwired into us, but we need to manage it and to work around it, I guess, is the important lesson from this book. The last point to come out of this book from this author is that society and culture also influence our behavior to a big extent. I've been very fortunate to have grown up in a dual cultured family with both my Greek culture and my Australian culture. But the authors are saying here that some behaviours are socially conditioned. This used to be the Oak, Paula. Remember when we used to come past here? The Oak, where we'd stop and get a milkshake. How beautiful. Haven't been on this road for years. So, what are we getting at? What are we saying here? That our behaviours, or some of our behaviours, are socially conditioned. The author here gives us an example that in Honduras, murder is 450 times higher than what it is in Singapore. So what we're kind of suggesting here is that culturally, some cultures provide a platform for more violence, turn a blind eye to violence. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a sociologist. But it's just a point that we can throw out there. That's each culture influences their populations differently. And I know that my Greek side is very, very much different to my Australian side. I'm warm from my Greek side. I'm touchy-feely from my Greek side. There are certain elements from my Australian side that I love and I respect and I appreciate. But the author here then goes on to say that at the macro level, at the cultural level, there are two types of cultural types that are predominant. And one is a collectivist culture and the other one is an individualist culture. So a collectivist culture is one that looks after everybody. So it's probably easier to look at it from an individualist perspective. So an individualist culture is the one that puts the individual on the pedestal and it's all about me, 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 me. Whereas a collectivist culture is the one that puts society first, the country first, the family first, the community first, and the individual is a servant to all of those other bodies. So the author then goes on to say that collectivists define themselves in relationship to others. And whereas on the other hand, the individual define themselves as standing out from the others and standing out from the crowd. So depending on what sort of culture, what sort of environment you've been brought up in will help shape the sort of culture or the behaviors that you're comfortable in expressing. So it's probably good to sit and think about how you were brought up, what sort of family were you brought up in. You know, were you brought up in a family where your parents were all about you, and making you spoiled and just self-centered? Or were they the sort of family who brought you up with Titapi o Cosmos, do the right thing by the family, Vamos ao Coriol, let's go to the village, let's go to church, let's help here, let's help there. So there are two different spins, there are two different things happening, and we've got to understand which one is predominant in our makeup as our personality. But to once again understand, we've got these two things clashing and working behind the surface in each and every one of our lives. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. We're almost at the Hunter Valley, so I thank Paula for giving me a half an hour or so to express myself. And I am driven very, very strongly by this purpose that I have to complete these 1,000 vlogs by my 61st birthday. And it's 1,000 vlogs in English. I've already done 1,000, but 61 of those 1,000 are in Greek. But my next goal is to do 1,000 in English, and I'm well on my way now. So I'll do another 3 or 4, hopefully this afternoon, and pump a few out over the next few days, God willing. I've done all the prep work. I've got them all ready and raring to go. All I need is to find the time and some motivation to do them. So I'll finish up with a positive affirmation. I'm alive, I'm well, I feel absolutely great. To my friends and family, stay connected, stay relevant, stay reasonable. I look forward to coming to you again from a different location with a different message, a message of empowerment, where we can be the wind beneath our wings, and we can live, learn and pass it on, helping each other get through the morning, get through the day, and get through this challenge that we have, which is called life. So Yassas, take care, and we'll chat again. Bye for now. Take care.